We see a lot of current events around us, but how do they seem to line up with prophecy? Well, it does depend on your opinion, and I could be as wrong as the next guy, but let's talk. Stay tuned.
Holy Spirit, come and refresh me. Holy Spirit, come and refresh me.
Welcome to Through the Bible in 5 Minutes, and I'm your host, Brad Keeney. Now, we're taking a break with this particular episode from our line-by-line chapter and verse studies as we're going through the book of Revelation to talk about current events. And remember, this is one of several videos that talk about what we call discussion topics, where we discuss like the mark of the beast, or we're discussing the rapture of the church and when that may happen. Or where I paralleled Matthew 24 and Revelation 6 into 7, looking for a possible answer for rapture. Or other topics that are not necessarily line by line, chapter and verse. Usually try to keep these simple, short, and easy. And right as I'm filming this right now, I think it's very important to note, it's April 9th of 22. And so that puts it in perspective of where we're at with these things. And I have concerns, and that's one of the reasons I'm bringing up here. And again, I could be as wrong as the next guy. But the interesting thing is, we do see some things happening that make me wonder. I have concerns about how the election's going to go in things, for example, or what's going to happen with that. And I have concerns about the world government and the way things seem to be functioning. As you guys have seen before, it seems like the world's working, for example, when it comes to climate change, kind of all as one unit. Or when it comes to the COVID situation and vaccine mandates, or trying to encourage people to get vaccinated and things. It's kind of all together. And I'm not commenting on that specifically. What I'm looking at is this one world situation. And it seems like China is a model almost for how we're doing things. If you remember 10 years ago, if you saw someone wearing a mask, you knew they were in China, if that was the case. Now we see it all over the world. Or we're coming to the end of the COVID thing. It seems to be slowing down. But still, it seems like the governments are functioning together. So as we look at our current times and prophecies and how they tie together, one thing I'd like to focus on with this one is the one world government situation, or the possible one world government. Now again, I could be wrong, but it is interesting how, for example, when it comes to climate change, China doesn't seem to be punished at all with this situation, even though they're the largest offender. Another interesting thing that I see is with the Russian situation. We have that invasion that happened recently into Ukraine. The battle's still going on as I speak, although it seems like there's a bit of a stalemate shaping up. But I almost wonder about that as well. The reason I do is, for example, if we look at our president's situation, we know that he's been rumored to be involved with China and Russia. Actually, the thing you've heard about where it talks about 10% for the big guy, that was actually a Russian email that came from. And we look at other things like the sanctions. You know, not all the banks, as of the speaking in this recording, are sanctioned in Russia. The majority of them are, and I'm not saying there's not sanctions, but if you have one bank, and only one bank, that's all it takes. The Russia operates as one unit. So I doubt that that's very effective, to be honest with you. But the biggest thing that gets me, and I will flash it up on the screen right now, as you can see, is this New York Post ad that says, New York Post, it says, Biden is letting Putin run the Iran nuclear talks. Now I'll leave that up there for a second again. That's actually a March 12th article. However, you can look that up yourself, but as I believe that's still the situation. So it makes me wonder how angry is this whole situation making President Biden and his situation and what's going on. How angry is it making Russia? When we look at Russia right now, has yet to condemn the situation. They have yet to say anything negative. Actually, we know that they may want to take Taiwan. Actually, I believe China has said that they would like to do that. So that's the obvious reason. But still, when we're looking at where people tend to want to pull together as a one world government, and China's at the center of that, why are they not condemning what Putin is doing? Could it be that this conflict that seems to be arising is actually all run by one set of players? That is possible. And that's one of the things I wanted to consider, because if we look, for example, in the 2nd chapter of Daniel, and remember the 2nd chapter of Daniel and the 7th chapter of Daniel run together. And I would highly recommend for our future discussion here that you look at both those two chapters in Daniel. Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel chapter 7. Chapter 2 is the most relevant one. Chapter 7 kind of explains chapter 2 as well. But anyway, in chapter 2 we see the statue that Nebuchadnezzar has the dream of. And it has the golden head, which represents Babylon, the silver arms, which are Medo-Persia, the bronze body, which is Greece, and the iron legs, which go into iron and clay feet. And those are the Roman Empire. Now, keep in mind, a lot of wonderful people believe that Revelation has been completely fulfilled, or I shouldn't say completely. To say Jesus isn't coming back is heretical. But I believe it was fulfilled up to chapter 19 based on the fact that there are so many wonderful prophecies that they point to in Revelation that seem to have already been fulfilled. But I might remind you that actually there's a character in about 164 through 171 before Christ called Antiochus IV Epiphanes. I would ask that you look that up as well. And he, historically, seemed to fulfill Daniel to the point where the enemies of the Bible want to say the book of Daniel was written after the fact instead of before the fact. Now, Daniel was written about 500 years before Jesus, and Antiochus, like I said, was about 165 before Jesus. So if it was written in Daniel's time, it was a prophecy, and we know it was because we have copies, plus we have the Septuagint, which confirms that it was written before, because that copy was even made before that situation happened. But going back to that situation, it seemed to be fulfilled, but Jesus told us that when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, then, basically head for the hills. That's my paraphrase. But Jesus says it's going to happen again. So we have a perfect example there of a prophecy being made, seemingly being fulfilled, and then Jesus tells us it's going to happen again. Could it be that prophecy was made in Revelation, seemingly fulfilled, but it's going to happen again? I believe that's true. But at any rate, so let's go back to that statue in Daniel. Now those two legs are the two halves of the Roman Empire. Remember, there's an east and a west. Please look that up, but that's the case. They actually lasted different periods of time even. But at any rate, they were the same Roman Empire. Could it be that the one world empire at the end times also has an east and a west? Something to think about. Could America be part of that? Could China be the other part of that? And could there be a friction between those two to make people appear or think that that's not a one world government, when in fact the same people are in control of both sides? That's something for you to think about. As I made the case earlier when I was talking about how everyone seems to be somewhat related here, when we look at the major world leaders for Russia, China, and America, it's something to think about. Now, one last thought I'd like to put out here, which is interesting. Right now we're getting ready to, our next episode is going to be starting chapter 18 of Revelation in our line-by-line chapter and verse studies. And in chapter 18, we're going to see Babylon is explained. We just did chapter 17 with Babylon the Great Harlot. But let's look at the definition of harlot. Remember, by biblical definition, harlot, or as you look at the book of Hosea as an example, the whole book is started on that topic. It's someone who says they would follow God and then didn't follow God. So, if you stop and think about it, could China be Babylon the Great Harlot? The answer would be no. Could Russia be? Well, the Orthodox Church in Russia was pretty strong at one point, but I don't think so. Could America be? Well, the way we're acting today, we certainly could be. So some people will say America is not an end-time prophecy, and that could be true for sure. I could be wrong. Or could America be part of the political end of Babylon the Great Harlot? Unfortunately, that fits, in my opinion. But of course, we won't know till we know. So all these things will become clear as we go. Remember, in our first 30 line-by-line chapter and verse studies, we looked at prophecies of Christ and how they were fulfilled, because now we know his first coming prophecies are fulfilled. And one of the things we saw over and over again is it doesn't necessarily work out like you think it does. So I could be totally wrong. But there's some food for thought in our current events and how they fulfill and fit with Bible prophecy, which I think that they do at some level. But again, I hope I'm wrong. I hope everything goes well in November. I hope everything goes smoothly. And I hope this isn't headed into a very difficult time for us. But at any rate, we need to know Jesus. So if you don't understand the gospel, I'm going to try to remember to put the gospel up above so you can check into that. It's in the playlist also. It's got its own folder. And again, you got to know Jesus. That's the key. None of us are perfect, remember. So don't be thinking that because you're a good person you're going to make it in heaven, because the standard is perfection. That's why Jesus came and made that standard of perfection, so that if you put your faith in him and allow his payment for your sins to take away your sins, you can be in heaven forever. But at any rate, check out the gospel. Take care. God bless. And we'll see you next time on Through the Bible in 5 Minutes.